Mama Ukamaka said, "Please go, Ebele. I don't want to have anything to do with you and your pregnancy anymore. Biko, gawa, gawa, gawa. Go, go, go. Please, just come and go." Mama Ukamaka, please, I need your help. I've been very sick lately and I'm in a lot of pain. "Go to the village clinic at Nkweke," replied the midwife. "Maybe they will attend to you there," she said. Ebele replied, "But Nkweke is too far. Besides, I don't have any money. My husband was the provider and you know he is no more." "You should have thought of that before you killed him," shouted Mama Ukamaka. "Now get out of my house." Once, in the land of Amakohia, lived a young lady named Ebele. She was the only child of her late parents. Her parents had died when she was 12 years old. So, she had to go live with her father's only sister, Aunt Ifedi, who lived in Umudim, a small village not too far away from Amakohia. Aunt Ifedi was married to Maziuzo. They both had 2 daughters, Ada and Ego. Aunt Ifedi was not an easy woman to live with. She always seemed to have something eating her up inside. She made life miserable for everyone, including her husband. When Maziuzo got tired of her troubles, he took to himself another wife, Ukamaka. Ukamaka was the opposite of Ifedi. She was a very pleasant and easygoing woman. She would usually tell a joke to make everyone laugh, just to lighten the tension in the air. But even at that, she still had troubles living with Ifedi. So life went on. 6 years after Ebele went to live with her aunt in Umudim, Maziuzo died of a strange illness which lasted only a week. He had been married to Ukamaka for 2 years, and they had a son whom they named Emeka. As life went on, after Maziuzo passed away, living with Ifedi was more torture than ever. One day, Ebele went outside to use the toilet. She found Aunt Ifedi standing behind a plantain tree, which was behind the toilet. She was holding up a calabash that had a red piece of cloth tied around it, and she was speaking into the calabash. Ebele could not understand what she was saying. She stood there for a while, watching her. Then she decided it was just Auntie Ifedi being weird again. So she went about her business. Ebele was 24 years old when she got married to Chidubem. Chidubem was a successful trader from Amakohia. Few years after their marriage, Ebele gave birth to a son they named Chika. Chika was a very happy baby. He made his parents very proud. Unfortunately, he died at 13 months after he was briefly ill. Months after baby Chika died, Ebele conceived 3 more times but miscarried the pregnancies. The 4th one made it to 9 months. She gave birth to a beautiful baby boy again, but which unfortunately was a stillbirth. Ebele was devastated. She cried for days and couldn't come to the reality that she suffered a hectic pregnancy and ended up without a child. The pregnancy had been a very difficult one for her. She was sick almost throughout the pregnancy, and the midwife had to put her on bed rest. "Mem," her husband said, "why are you sitting here crying? I've told you not to worry. God will bless us with another child, and this time he will live." "I'm tired," cried Ebele. "What is wrong with me? Why are all my children dying? Who has laid this curse on me?" "You are not cursed, Ebele," said her husband. "Sometimes things happen that way for a purpose. Ngwa, come inside and have something to eat. Oh, I've made your favorite, agua, and plantain, he said teasingly. Ebele smiled. Her husband was such a blessing. He had been so patient and supportive of her. She wanted to please him. She wanted so badly to give him a child. She followed her husband inside. It was 8 weeks after Ebele lost her 5th baby. It had rained heavily the night before. Chidubem did not go for his business that day, as Ebele was quite sick and he wanted to stay home to take care of her. He was busy in the kitchen preparing ofe nsala, which was the only food Ebele had requested to eat after much pleading from her husband. Ebele was down with fever and she was seriously hoping it was not another pregnancy, as she was tired of losing her babies. Then suddenly, she heard her husband scream. She called out to him, but there was no reply. She managed to get herself out of bed and went in the direction of the kitchen, which was where the scream had come from. She stepped out of the door, only to find her husband Chidubem sprawled across the pavement. He had slipped and hit his head on the concrete floor, blood slowly trickling down the back of his head. Ebele stood in shock, looking down at her husband's body. Then she regained herself. She screamed all of a sudden, with all the strength she could muster. She threw herself on her husband's body and cried. The neighbors who heard her gathered. Some of them tried to lift and pull her away from the body. Others just stood there, offering what sounded like condolence, while muttering and whispering among themselves. 2 weeks later, Chidubem was buried. Only a few people attended the funeral. Ebele was surprised because Chidubem was well known in the community and he was always nice and cordial with everyone. After the burial ceremony, Adaku, who was Ebele's only friend at the time, whispered a rumor to Ebele. She said, "There's a story going around the village that you are a witch. The villagers are saying you sacrificed your unborn children and now your husband." She made her statement almost as if she made the conclusion that the villagers are right. Ebele breathed a heavy sigh and said to her friend, "What do you think, Adako? Do you think I'm a witch too?" Adako shrugged and said, "I don't know. You know, these days, you can't trust anybody. With the mysterious way your first child died, and then miscarriages, stillbirth. I don't know, Ebele. I don't know," looking away from Ebele, who was intensely looking at her. Ebele said nothing. She got up and walked away from her friend. Adaku called out to her, "I'm not saying you are a witch, Ebele. My friend, I'm just confused though." She left that day and never came back to visit her friend again. 1 month after Chidubem was buried, Ebele found out she was pregnant, and once again she was devastated. Partly because she had concluded that she was going to have a miscarriage again, and partly because her husband was no more. She was all by herself. The pregnancy wasn't an easy one either. She was constantly sick and couldn't eat anything. She started to look pale and thin. By the 8th month, she went to see the midwife, Mama Okamaka, who had taken care of her other pregnancies, but she was not well received. Mama Okamaka said, "Please go, Ebele. I don't want to have anything to do with you and your pregnancy anymore. Biko, gawa, gawa, gawa. Go, go, go. Please, just come and go. Please, I need your help. I've been very sick lately and I'm in a lot of pain." "Go to the village clinic at Nkweke," replied the midwife. "Maybe they will attend to you there," she said. Ebele replied, "But Nkweke is too far. Besides, I don't have any money. My husband was the provider, and you know he is no more. You should have thought of that before you killed him," shouted Mama Okamaka. "Now get out of my house." She chased Ebele away. Ebele left her house crying. She was in a lot of pain. She got tired of walking and decided to lay under a mango tree. By the time she got to the tree, she was bleeding. She laid under the tree, groaning and crying to the people passing by for help. But no one stopped to help her. One by one, the people passed by without stopping. A few of them who stopped just stood there making comments. Tofiakwa, hello. Her sins are catching up with her. Others said, Witch! The spirit of her late husband and unborn children have started dealing with her. Hey! A few times, Ebele tried to stand on her feet to go home, but the pain was too much. She laid down again under the tree and continued to cry for help. Then a man walked up to her, angry at the people who were just standing by and not helping her. Why are you people just watching her instead of helping her? That was all Ebele heard before she passed out. It was so many hours later when she regained consciousness. She looked around and realized she was at the clinic at Nkweke. How did she get here? She wondered. The last she could remember, no one wanted to help her. She had a needle inserted in her left arm, allowing the flow of the intravenous drip she had been given. Moments later, a man who turned out to be the doctor walked into the room and greeted her. "You're awake," he said. "How are you feeling now?" "Better," Ebele replied. "The pain has subsided. Your baby is doing fine. You should be expecting the delivery in a few weeks." Ebele said nothing. She looked indifferent. A few minutes after the doctor left the room, a middle-aged man walked into the room. He greeted her. "I am so glad to see you are doing better." "Who are you?" Ebele asked. "And why are you here?" "My name is Pastor Chibundo." "Ah," said Ebele. "You must be the new pastor sent from the city." "You don't know my story. I am the cursed widow and witch of Amakohia. No one interacts with me in this community. Everyone knows that. Even the former pastor, his wife, and congregation avoid me like a plague. Why are you here? Are you not afraid that I would sacrifice you too? Just like I sacrificed my husband and unborn children?" Ebele asked out of anger. "You are not a witch," replied Pastor Chibundo. "You are just a woman who has had bad experiences. And from what I hear, I don't think they are just mere happenings." Ebele looked at him for a while and thought he looked sincere. Then she said, "Are you the one who brought me to the clinic?" "Yes," the pastor replied. "Thank you for saving my life," she said. Ebele remained at the clinic for 2 more days. Then the resident doctor discharged her. Pastor Chibundo was there to help take her home. He continued to visit her at her home. He shared the word of God with her and prayed for her. On one of his visits, Ebele had said to him, "I am afraid of what is about to happen." "What do you mean?" the pastor asked. "My babies end up dying. None of them has ever lived, apart from my first baby, Chika, who lived only 13 months. What is the point of getting pregnant if I can't have my babies alive? This one will be different. It will live. I can feel it in my spirit." Ebele was not convinced, but she remained hopeful. She gave birth to a beautiful baby boy 2 weeks after her first admission at the clinic. The labor and childbirth was not easy at all. She was in a lot of pain and lost a lot of blood. Pastor Chibundo was there with 2 other people from the church. They kept praying until finally the baby arrived. Ebele named him Chidubem after her late husband. The baby looked so much like his father. The pastor called the baby Emmanuel. He prayed and anointed the baby and declared him God's gift, which the devil cannot snatch. Ebele gave her life to Christ. She started attending church with her baby. Some of the members of the church started to warm up to her. Others avoided her, but she was glad for Pastor Chibundo, who was always an encouragement for her faith. One Sunday after service, Pastor Chibundo called her aside and said, "God gave me a revelation for you. I saw a calabash, and inside it was a tiny figurine representing you and your happiness." Then he asked, "Was your father or maybe mother involved in idol worshipping?" Ebele thought for a second. Then she said, "No, my parents were not Christians, but they were not idol worshippers either." Then suddenly she remembered. "Chimo!" she exclaimed. Hey! What is it?" asked the pastor. "I remember. When I lost my parents, I was 12 years old. So I went to live with my father's only sister, Ifedi. One day I saw her standing behind the plantain tree, speaking into a calabash." "Does she live in Amakohia?" asked the pastor. "No, she lives in Omodim." "We have to go there," said Chibundo. So 2 days later, Ebele, the pastor, and 3 other church members visited Omodim. On getting there, Ebele met her cousins, Ada and Ego, who had long returned from their husbands' houses as a result of barrenness. They told Ebele what had happened. Ifedi had died a few months ago after she confessed to witchcraft. As it happened, Ifedi had been initiated into the coven by her late father. Ebele's father, Mazindokwe, was supposed to be initiated too, but his spirit was too powerful and rejected the coven's call several times. So since the coven couldn't have Mazindokwe, they went after his daughter, Ebele. Her husband and unborn children were sacrifices Ifedi offered. She had also made her 2 daughters barren. Ebele showed Pastor Chibunde the spot where she once saw Ifedi standing with a calabash. They dug around until they found it. The calabash contained 3 figurines, some pieces of kola nut, cowries, and a red piece of cloth. Pastor Chibundo and the others prayed, nullifying the potency of the items. Then they set the calabash ablaze and all the items inside. He prayed and anointed Ebele and her 3 cousins, and also prayed around the compound, sanctifying it by the blood of Jesus. Ebele felt free at last. Months later, her cousins Ada and Ego reunited with their husbands. Ebele remarried 3 years later. Her son Emmanuel continued to live and grow.